Good evening and thank you for joining us today. Before we begin, allow me to thank Rajat Ubaikar, Ramesh Kumar, and Sanjay Shirodkar for joining us today. This webinar has been organized by Money Life Foundation. Money Life Foundation is an 11-year-old NGO, and its primary goal is to spread financial literacy and help address a wide spectrum of issues that impacts us as customers. Today's session is a little bit offbeat, and so are our speakers today. This session is about Rajat's 10,000 kilometer journey across India, the experiences he has gained, and the stories he has to share. Through that, we will also stay into the lives of truckers, the problems they face, and the issues that come up which the government needs to address. But before starting today's main program, I would like to chart out six ground rules for all of us to follow. For optimal viewing, we request you to keep the webinar on speaker view mode. We have kept you on mute and will unmute you when you want to ask a question during the question and answer session. During the Q&A, we request you to the raise hands button available on Zoom if you wish to ask any question. Please feel free to use the chat feature on Zoom to share your comments, questions, and observations. But my sincere request would be to send the message to everyone. Also request you to not to send us personal messages during the session, as we would not be able to monitor or respond. Also, please note your homes and backgrounds are visible to all of us during the webinar. So in case you wish to protect your privacy, I would suggest you to use the stop video button on Zoom. This program is being recorded and would be uploaded on our YouTube channel, that is youtube.com/moneylifetv. So you can watch this again. Now about our speakers today. Rajat Ubaikar is the author of the critically acclaimed travelogue, Truck the India, A Hitchhiker's Guide to Hindustan, published by Simon and Schuster, based on his 10,000 kilometers journey across India, hitchhiking with truck drivers. Rajat trained as an electrical engineer at IIT Kanpur and went on to study journalism at the Asian College of Journalism after a stint in management consulting. A recipient of the Pollster Award in 2016 for his reportage, Rajat's work has appeared in publications such as Indian Express, Hindustan Times, Mint, Scroll, among others. He lives in Mumbai and spends his spare time reviewing books, collecting trivia, and exploring India's archaeological sites. He has recently cleared the UPSC exam and will be joining the civil services very soon. Rajat, we are really happy to have you with us.
Thank you.
Ramesh Kumar has been a print, TV, and web journalist for almost 40 years. He was inducted as a life member of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, India, and has launched Drivers Dunia, India's first driver-focused English quarterly. In February 2013, he set up the KRK Foundation to focus on improving educational and healthcare needs of the truck drivers' families living in remote areas. Ramesh Kumar was inducted as a member of the National Committee on Supply Chain and Logistics under the Ministry of Agriculture and has authored multiple books on this subject. Our next panelist is Pune-based Sanjay Shirodkar, who is an RTI and civil activist working on issues like toll and FASTag. Mr. Shirodkar has filed several RTIs to find out information on the toll load across Mumbai-Pune Expressway and the highways. May I now request Suchita ma'am to take over today's proceeding?
Thanks, Yogesh. Good evening and welcome to this jolly truck ride with Rajat Ubaikar on Truck Day India. This is the book, and I suggest all of you read it, buy it. I really enjoyed it. You may also wonder why a discussion now, because he's written the book well over a year ago. But then all of us were in a lockdown for a year, so even if you got inspired to go anywhere, there's nothing you could do about it. We're just about opening up, so it's the right time to discuss the book. But more seriously, while Rajat's book is a fun read, it's a fund of information on truck drivers and their lives, what makes them tick, and all this is put into perspective and interspersed with information where his journalism and his engineering and everything comes in. And that's what makes this book a lasting read. It's really important for many of us who are privileged, tech savvy, with fast cars, even faster data, who think we want to zip through our highways and expressways without understanding that it's not so much about us, but about transporters and the transport industry, and whether any of this is making a difference to their lives and helping them is some of the things that he's touched on in this book, which is what sort of engaged me even more. So he's got a live record of issues that impact us because he sat in those trucks and looked at the corruption, harassment, what happens at toll nakas from the inside, including what happens with the Naxalites, which states are more corrupt, which are not. It's such a fantastic journey. So I'm going to start today's program by asking him to talk about his book, and then, as you've heard, we've got a fantastic panel with Ramesh Kumar and Sanjay Shirodkar, and we're going to touch on the key lessons from this book which need a more serious discussion. So Rajat, before you join the civil services and probably have to zip up a little bit, I hope you're going to have a free and frank talk just now. So next 20 minutes or so, over to you.
Thank you so much, Suchita ma'am, for that very generous introduction. It means a lot to me that you enjoyed the book, and in many ways, the purpose has been served for what I wrote the book. And in this brief talk, that introductory comments, I will mainly talk about my experiences, what led me to do this journey in the first place, what led me to travel across India in trucks, and secondly, I will try to lay out a broad perspective on the industry itself, set some context for the discussion that we will have later on. So these are the two broad themes I will try to address. So beginning with my journey itself, I mean, it is an offbeat way definitely to see India, as is quite obvious. But what led me to do it firstly was this childhood fascination with trucks. The the sayings they had painted on their backs while we overtook them on highways. And once I even experienced the personal generosity of a trucker who rescued me when I was stranded on a highway near Shimla, and then didn't even bother to charge any money for it. And this sort of unself-conscious generosity stayed with me, and it made me curious. And this was when I was around 17, 18, and it made me curious, what kind of lives do these guys lead on the road? Because in my imagination, it seemed like a life of adventure, of freewheeling adventure, of going around places, seeing places we never really see otherwise. And it seemed like a fascinating journey in my mind, the idea of their lives. And this sort of uh, interest in their lives led me to become a journalist in some ways too, because my aim was to get to travel India more and try to see its warts and blemishes too. I mean, not just the tourist spots which are, you know, plastered on the brochures and so on, but the everyday life of its ordinary citizens, which gets so easily glossed over in even say mainstream reportage, even business reporting, which largely focuses on the formal sector. And the informal sector in this process gets a raw deal, whereas around say 80% of our workforce is employed in the informal sector. But there is no discussion, there is no even acknowledgement of the difficult lives they lead on a day-to-day basis, and what we as a society can do to improve the lot of many of these people. And truck drivers were one segment which seemed in my imagination would constitute a subculture of people, because they have been doing this, leading this lifestyle for a long time. Surely some characteristics are developed. So this sort of naive anthropological urge to document their lives on the road was another thing that propelled me. Secondly, while say I was working as a business journalist, used to read that India has one of the highest cost of logistics in the world. That 14% of our GDP is highest in the world, whereas other countries have say 6-7%. But what does that cost of logistics really mean? Because the conduct of our economy on a day-to-day basis happens on our highways. That is where all the goods are transported. That is where the economy basically is, and not just in interest rates and fiscal deficits, which is what the big newspapers usually discuss in their op-eds. But what is the microeconomics of life on the highway? How are human relations on the highway? What kind of frictions are there on the highway? And this sort of perspective says a lot about the reality of rule of law in our country in many ways. And that led me to go out and do this. So with that little introduction, I'd like to talk a bit about my route plan for the trip, just to lay some context for where I went and how I went and so on. So I started off from Mumbai. See, I am not someone who has any remote connection to the transport industry in any way whatsoever. None of my family is in the trucking business or in the transport business. So this entire thing was very new to me. So to start off, I managed to find one truck driver who was willing to take me from Mumbai to Delhi. And from then on, I decided that it will largely be spontaneous trips, that I did not have a route plan as such. These are the pit stops I want to make and so on. Because in my mind, that would totally ruin the fun and the spontaneity of the adventure that I thought I would take. So that was my rough plan. As I went along, I started to figure out how the highway works. Where are the what are the kind of places where you can expect to find truckers who may be amenable to taking you along? What are the places where you can say try to have a conversation with a trucker and convince them? Because the first thing to realize about India, and especially its highways, is that it's a very low trust. It's a trust deficit society, trust deficit environment. Nobody trusts anyone out there on the highways. It's in the shadow zones of our civilization in many ways, because we while in the cities we like to think that there is rule of law and so on, but the highways are one place where the reality of India really kicks in. So to reduce that anxiety, I would first say approach truckers along in petrol pumps where they would be just stopping for a refill, or I would go to dhabas and somehow just tell them that, see, this is my aim. I want to understand your lives. I want to write about your problems in the hope that someday they may be solved. I mean, that's not really something in our control, but the first step is to at least document this. The first step of any policy action is information collection. And as far as the transformation, as far as the transport industry was concerned, this at this very stage we have somehow stopped. There had been, after 70 years of independence, there had been there was nothing I could come across any systematic record of life on Indian highways, of how things are conducted, what are the roadblocks that truckers face. I came across nothing when I wanted to read something, and in order to fulfill that wish, I started on this journey in some ways. So that was another purpose. So yeah, with that broad outline, I traveled from Mumbai to Srinagar, firstly via Punjab, Rajasthan, and so on. After that, I had one leg in Northeast, which is in Nagaland, Manipur, Assam. And in between, I also traveled in Uttar Pradesh, which I did not write about, but also in Kerala, Goa, and then in the southern states, all of them. That was my broad outline. Except for the central and some of the eastern states, I managed to cover quite a lot of ground. Because India is so huge, it's almost impossible to cover it all and do justice to all its rich sub-regions. So that was my broad route plan for the trips in some ways. So with this background aside, I would now like to talk about the transportation and the trucking industry itself. And first, I would like to begin with one very overlooked aspect in this particular field, which is how a truck itself is made. And most laypersons have the belief that the truck just comes out of the factory like it looks, and that's how it works. But the surprising reality, at least for me, was to see that trucks are built in these massive workshops almost entirely by hand, and there are around 15 to 20 types of specialized artisans who are employed in working in firming up one truck. It takes one whole month to build a truck, so it's essentially like building a house. And for the truck driver, a truck is not just another vehicle. For him, it's a home in many ways. It's a wife in many ways. So that's how they often even refer to their vehicles. And so a lot of care and attention goes into how the truck is constructed, what sort of design they want, and so on. So it's a very customized and personalized job, which is done by these truck artists. And as you may have seen, often trucks have these amazing artwork on its exterior. And these artwork, like I found out in my research later on, many of these motifs that recur, whether they be elephants or swans, all of these are motifs that go back to around 11th, 12th century. I mean, there was one ancient text which described shipbuilding in India in the 11th century. And many of the motifs that it described as being painted on the ships are still recurring in truck art. And this is through a medium of a transmission mainly involving nomadic communities. So trucking in India before these trucks came along was done by the Banjara communities and many of these nomadic communities whose job it was to transport huge sacks. Like they had entire caravans, around 10,000 animals, and they used to transport these food grains and cloth and everything across the country for armies, for kings. And the kind of designs they had on their animals, because for them the animals were not merely animals, they were linked so closely to the way of life that these designs and the embellishments that went on the animals were later to be found in truck art. So it's a very interesting history out here, which has been scarcely documented. Unfortunately, I've had to make do with bits and pieces here and there because this is such a unorganized sector, like we call it, and documentation is very low in this regard. So with that, with a detour into that subject, another aspect of trucking that I would like to cover is how truckers are recruited. So as you may imagine, like there was a recent survey by Save Life Foundation, and Save Life Foundation found, like, because this is one of the rare instances I found that there has been an actual scientifically designed survey to gauge what the state of the industry is like. This was not the case until even 2 3 years ago. So this particular survey found out that 9 out of 10 truckers, they do not have any sort of formal training at all. Most of them are recruited through informal networks. Someone could be from someone's village, so he recruits him. You'd accompany me as a khalasi. So the truckers usually travel in pairs. One is the ustad, who is the senior chap in charge of the truck, and then there's the khalasi, who's his helper. So this khalasi is typically someone from his village, someone from his caste, someone from his extended family, and that is how these guys are inducted. They learn the tricks of the road on the job for a year or two, in which they have to do the bidding of the ustad. Basically, you are get for the privilege of learning to drive a truck. You have to serve the ustad for a year or a year and a half, and you're paid a nominal amount, and your needs are taken care of on the road. So that is how the industry recruits its people in the first place. So formal training is very low, and even when you get the license, there are often no tests conducted. So all these issues often lead to poor driving skills also sometimes, because especially in the younger truck drivers, they they do not have any sort of formal training, and often the quality of the training that the ustad imparts can also be patchy. So these are some of the issues involved in, say, training truckers. And next comes the structure of the transportation industry itself, which I suppose we will delve into a bit more later in the discussion. So one would imagine that transportation just means like one guy who wants his goods delivered, he'll just call up a truck owner, and the job is done. But the truth is that the transportation industry is riddled with intermediaries, and these intermediaries are like they are two sets of intermediaries, not just one. So one set will represent the guy who wants to get his goods transported, and the other set will comprise of the guy who deals with the trucker and brings him. And the share of the proceeds that is cornered by the intermediaries is very high. I mean, it's around 20 to 30% going by various sources. Some even say 40%. And because of this structure, the kind of wages that the truck drivers get at the end of the day is severely affected, because a large share of the proceeds is cornered by the intermediaries. One trucker, for example, told me that India to ye dalalon ka desh hai. And that really stayed with me, because the stranglehold of the intermediaries, whether it be in trucking or in agriculture or in various fields, they are such entrenched interests who try to prevent in many ways any sort of reform, whether it be tech-led intermediation or so on. And this is one big aspect of the this industry that needs to be looked upon, that needs to be worked upon in some way. If we really want truckers to get a reasonable lifestyle, if you want people to actually come into trucking, because the sad reality is that most of the truckers would not even recommend trucking as a profession to their own family. So 85% of truck drivers in the Save Life Foundation said that they would not recommend trucking to their own family. Over half of them said they are totally unsatisfied with their job. So if we want people to come in, because this trucking, the driver shortage is slowly coming to a state of crisis. Because of driver shortage, 25 to 30% of the load is not being able to carry. I mean, trucks are idle because of driver shortages. So we need to make trucking a more attractive option, an attractive way of life in some ways. And there are some good startups which are trying to do this for them. For this thing to happen, we need to understand and recognize what are the broad issues that truckers face on the road. So, firstly, the most obvious one perhaps is the risk of accidents. Driving day and night is a very, very lonely, dangerous job, which is very likely to get you killed, probably more so than serving at the border in some ways. And because the kind of sleep deprivation these guys operate under, there is no fixed working hours. And most of the guys I traveled with were traveling on barely 2 to 3 hours of sleep, which was just mind-boggling to me. And some of them would only stop the truck and park it only when they caught themselves sleeping at the wheel. So more than are this typical idea we have of alcoholic truckers, which is a huge stereotype in India and in the media and so on, which I did not find it had any basis to it. Most of the drivers I traveled with told me they were very much conscious of the fact that driving drunk is going to get them killed. It's very likely to get them killed. There was this consciousness. But the biggest killer, in my opinion, is sleep deprivation, because it can instantly take your life. I mean, it's for no real fault of yours, except that your body is so tired that you can't take it. So this is another issue that truck drivers face on the road. One larger, broader issue is that of wage stagnation. And many truckers told me this about their life, that till the 90s things were very good. The real wages that they had were enough for them to live a decent lifestyle, and even they had some level of respect in society. But after that, their wages have stagnated a lot. Inflation has come up, the diesel rates have gone up, insurance rates have gone up, everything has gone up, but their wages have stagnated, which has seriously reduced the real wages that they earn. This is another major issue that truckers face. Another one, of course, is the lack of facilities in on Indian highways, because there is no thought whatsoever paid to the requirements of truckers, because it is just assumed that they'll take care of themselves. It's just there is no recognition of the fact that maybe there's something we can do, which goes in principle to the history of Indian approach of the Indian kings. For instance, in the medieval era, Sher Shah Suri, he built sarais where travelers and merchants could stay for free, and they got food at state expense, and their goods were protected by appointed officials. That was the level of interest that was paid by the state in ensuring the smooth conduct of commerce, which is at the heart of the prosperity of any state. But that is somehow not to be seen in since the British era only. I would say most of it has been left to the private sector to look after themselves, and there are no facilities for, say, lodging or toilet facilities, or some dormitories where they can sleep for a night when they're tired. And because of all these factors, other issues like sleep deprivation, all of this starts to come in. And so, yeah, this is another issue that I would like to talk about. Another one, of course, is the lack of respect in society. Most of them have internalized a perspective of themselves as outcasts, as pariahs. And this internalization of this belief was reflected very well in this one statement made by this trucker to me, who told me that we belong to the 37th caste, which is basically we are someone who is outside the social mainstream, and we are looked upon with suspicion and hostility. And this really hurts them more than anything. This really gnaws at them. They know that wherever they go, they will be looked upon with suspicion. And it even when there is an accident, like when one trucker told me, the public will always blame us, irrespective of the facts of the case. And whereas the bus driver possibly gets some support from his passengers, we will always be considered the culprits, that you are the one driving drunk. So they have to be doubly careful. And this also in turn leads to a counter reaction, right, towards society, because then you are not respected, you also develop contempt for the larger society in many ways. And this is not healthy. Apart from that, of course, on the road, there's a lot of extraction that happens from them, and it's systematic in many ways, this collection of money. And like Save Life Foundation, for instance, estimated that 50,000 crore is extracted every year from truckers in bribes. So this is, of course, a big issue which is plaguing the transportation sector. So these are the broad issues that truck drivers themselves face. Of course, there are things that the government is doing for them also. For example, in some states, I found that the government has built these truck lay-bys, which are meant for them to park their truck, maybe cook food or wait for a load and so on, which I thought was very thoughtful. So if these sort of practices are embedded while we are expanding our highways and so on, and if there's some sort of acceptance and acknowledgement is there, the end users of our highways are not just car owners, they are essentially truck owners. Because while we as commuters, we just inhabit the road for some time, right? We are just passerbys, but these guys live on the highways. The highway is their home, and that sort of recognition needs to creep into the policy circles for there to be adequate facilities built, and at a large scale. There are individual attempts here and there, but by and large, there's still a lot to be done that can be improved for truck drivers. So yeah, with that broad overview of this sector, I would like to pass on the discussion to Sucheta ma'am to take it forward. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rajat. I think that was a wonderful overview of everything that you went through. I wish we could have had time for more stories, but I really think read the book. Okay. So, to my mind, I think all this happened 5 years ago. His journey was 5 years ago, and a lot of things have changed. So, the big game changer since Truck Day India, I would say, has been technology. There are better trucks loaded with technology, tolls, you have FASTag, you have e-way bills now. All this is supposed to have made a difference. You have Google Maps and you have faster data, access to data, which allows better tracking, planning, control over journeys. People have smartphones, so all the drivers can afford the smartphones as well, which possibly wasn't so about 5 years ago. So I thought we should start the discussion with how technology is making a difference, including for disintermediation. Rajat's book, as he said, talks about how agents on two sides gobble up a big chunk of the costs, and we know that there is a lot of change in that direction. So I'm going to kick off this discussion by asking Ramesh, who's really our logistics expert with phenomenal experience in this field, to talk about, I thought each of the panelists could talk about one area, but at the moment, to start it off, may I ask Ramesh to speak on what difference technology has made, and especially e-way bills. Has it increased speed? Has it improved lives? Over to you, Ramesh.
Thanks, Sucheta. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to see, somebody like you taking a lot of interest in trucking segment, particularly on the drivers. And, usually I usually call them as the weakest supply chain link. Right from the Prime Minister till, the panwala outside your society, thanks to COVID, everybody is talking about supply chain. So it has become so common these days. Okay, so outside your panwala feels that he's not getting the Banarsi, pan. So that is why he feels, the supply chain disruption. See, today, we have excellent roads, we have excellent vehicles, but there is a huge shortage of truck drivers for a simple reason: the drivers are not getting treated properly. That's one point. Coming back, you asked a very specific question of technology. Well, if you really take a look at it, if you talk to any truck driver, ask him, you have a smartphone. He will say, "Nahi, mere paas nahi, I don't have it." So, but if you ask him whether he uses a WhatsApp, whether he watches movie, whether he watches song, he will say yes. So for him, yes, today, a lot of youngsters are coming to the field. A lot of these 50 plus drivers are gradually getting out of the field. So today, most of the young guys who coming into the trucking segment as a driver, they're all quite used to technology without knowing it's a technology. For them, it's just a phone. So thanks to phone, today they are able to do a lot more stuff. Okay, today, so earlier, whenever they used to go on a long haul, drive. So, every 100 kilometers or something, they used to get out of the phone, go to the, I'm sure, many of, I remember, I don't know how many of you watch, viewers know it, there is no, a mobile phone. Before 94, there is no mobile phone. Okay, so if if you and I don't have white collar guys don't have a mobile phone, how do you expect a driver to have a mobile phone? So what they used to do, their interaction with their, the fleet owners or supervisor, use every 100 kilometers or something, they used to get out of the, a truck, go to the nearest, phone booth or STD booth or something, call up their office and say, this is what, that is what, all those things. Okay, so that is what the kind of information flow was happening. There is no technology, no internet. It took it took a lot of time before that could happen. But even today, thanks to induction of a lot of young guys coming into this field, for a simple reason, the entry into the field, you don't require, even though you don't need an engineering degree, you don't need you don't need to be even a class 10 guy. Under pressure from thanks to this driver shortage, So the government does relax the rules. You don't have, there is no need for any, like basic qualification, but it's a very, very wrong move in a way. Okay, to meet the gap, this is happening. So what happened? So today, everybody uses a mobile phone. So which basically means everybody is using a smartphone. I'm talking about the technology part of it. So when you don't have to get out of your truck every 100 kilometers or something to go to the nearest STD booth to call up your office or something. Anyone in the office wants to see. Good old days, the office has to wait for the call from the driver because there is no way you can reach out the driver. Today, it's a two-way communication thanks to mobile phone, whatever it is.
But Mr. Ramesh,
This is what's happening.
I was wondering if you can touch on technology in the broader sense, like have e-way bills ensured that
Sujata, look, the focus is on truck drive. The induction of technology at a fleet owner side may be very high. There is no, it doesn't serve any purpose. At the end of the day, that's what I was saying. The government is investing crores and crores of rupees building roads, and all the HV OEMs are spending lakhs and lakhs of crores of rupees and creating R&D and doing all those kind of high-end vehicles. Okay, but the guy, neither the fleet owner nor the like a Tata's, Birlas, Ashok Leyland, none of these guys are really driving. It's like uneducated, poorly educated driver who is driving. So what is his awareness about technology? Okay, so his technology his touch point for technology is nothing but a mobile phone.
I understand that.
Okay, that's the reason why I want to talk about the mobile phone part of it. Okay. So, this is what's happening. So these guys are able, today, this is where the two-way communication happens. The guy from the fleet owner side, supervisor, is able to call up a driver anytime, 24/7, anytime he can call up. The same way, driver, if he runs into any problem, he can call up his office anytime. Okay, today it has reached a stage. Suppose there is a problem, on the highway, if a driver faces a problem, something happens, the supervisor asks, please, shoot a picture and send it through WhatsApp. So he doesn't have to go on, log into a laptop or log into something to open the email and send it. On his mobile, he shoots. Okay, send it through a WhatsApp. So the supervisor at the other end sees, okay, what is the damage? Okay, this is where the technology is really happening. So on the other side, you are talking about e-way bill. See, look, if you really, yes, e-way bill, e-way bill is a technologically a nice thing happened, but there are a lot of glitches in that. Okay, but in fact, the glitches in the, see, look, as far as the driver is concerned, he is not too much worried about it. See, as far as the e-way bill is concerned, the major worry is for fleet owners, the transporters, because they are facing the brunt of it. As far as the driver is concerned, whether it's the rollout of a GST or a e-way bill, it is not that much a problem for him. Okay, yes, there is a very minor problem, but it is not as much as the fleet owner faces. Yes, the e-way bill has really made life much more easier, but thanks to the bureaucratic way of handling things, that even today, if you have seen the papers, see, look, there is some problem with the GST problem. The IT, the invoices has been called up, and a group has been set up, including a CAS. They are trying to sort out. The similar way, see, all the transport associations are asking for, there are some glitches in the GST. Basically, he said that within 24 hours, they have to cover, earlier they used to cover 200 kilometers, now they have to cover 100 kilometers. It is simply not possible due to several, it's not, when particularly in the parcel segment, when they move from point A to point B, it is, they don't move in one go.
I understand, Mr. Ramesh Kumar, I understand. In fact, I was actually hoping that
the government need to really address that issue.
Correct. I thank you for those insights. I was actually hoping that we look at technology from a larger perspective. While drivers are important, we are discussing them. They operate within a larger framework. And, that is also one of the questions that I want to pose to Sanjay Shirodkar, who has done a lot of work on this. He's actually been on the trucks, also done a bit of the journey like Rajat, and filed so much of RTI to look at what happens on the road and whether, again, technology, I'm going to continue with this, FASTag and everything else, what difference has it made? So Sanjay, may I request you to take this forward a little bit?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. In that truck journey, myself and Ramesh, we were together. It was a wonderful experience. I will speak about toll and FASTag. Yes, FASTag has increased a journey, but only on expressway and only till the stretch is there. Like for example, Mumbai Pune or Yamuna Express or Delhi Jaipur, there are, yes, journey has become faster because of FASTag, but only on expressways. Say, for example, 6-lane highways or 8-lane highways, but not on 2-lane or 4-lane highways. Actually, any transporter can afford truck if any multi-axle. I'll give you example. Multi-axle, if fully loaded multi-axle truck, if travels 1,000 kilometers in 24 hours, then only they can afford or maybe benefited from this journey. But unfortunately, because of these toll barriers, that journey has restricted to from 350 kilometers to 500 kilometers. So that is one point. As far as toll is concerned, yes, the delays have increased a lot. There are reports by TCI and IIM Kolkata. They done research and report in 2007-8, then 11-12, then 14-15. The delay on toll plazas, delay of fuel and economy and man hours has been increased from 2007-8 report that was around 35,000, and now it has crossed 1 lakh crore. The delays on toll plaza, in spite of having FASTag. FASTag is not implemented on all the toll plazas. We have more than 1,000 toll plazas, 750 plus national highways plus respective state highways. Now, Rajat mentioned one word called truck lay-by, and he said, "Aisa chahiye ya hona chahiye." I would say after 2008, strictly Ministry of Road Transport published guidelines, specification on 4-lane and 6-lane highways, and they have to, government, any toll road or highway, if built, they have to provide truck lay-by rest areas by default. That is the right of the commuter, which is not being provided since 2008 till date. That is the problem.
You want to tell us a little bit about what the transportation industry has proposed? I mean, they had talked about paying the toll upfront to avoid these delays and losses, right? Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. Transport industry initiated by AIFTC, All India Motor Transport Congress, and couple of unions. They have got together. Later, they have met in 2012. Then PM. Then 2014, 15, 16, current PM, Secretary Roads, Ministry of Road Transport, they have requested barrierless, seamless traffic. They agreed to pay. They shown interest. Whatever will be the toll amount the government collects, we are ready to pay every year on 1st of January. Whatever will be the amount. Amount was in 2014-15 that the amount was 35,000, but government did not agree to that or didn't show any interest on that particular proposal, because if you see the simple calculation, because toll collection is much more than that. 1.5 crore, there are trucks and national highway, national permit bus. Simple 1 crore truck and bus plying on the national highway every day is one toll plaza in 500. Imagine the calculation, yearly calculation, which is much higher because of under-reporting, not reporting proper vehicle population, not reporting proper toll collection. Only because of that, I think government is not ready to accept the proposal or not willing to do on this subject. On the contrary, we pay so much toll, we don't get anything. There is a very big list of facilities which every commuter, not only truck drivers, every commuter has to get. It's a very big list of bus-based, truck lay-by, toll plaza, rest areas, pickup bus stops, highway landscaping, advanced traffic management system, highway patrol 24 hours, ambulances, cranes, communication, light system, maiden, drainage, everything. That right of the commuter. But only we get it toll plaza. Rest all, we have to fight, or I didn't come across any stretch in the whole of India which shows all the facilities on one stretch, not a single 2-lane, 4-lane, 6-lane, or 8-lane expressway. The sad part is, in contrast, expressway, any expressway, they expect truck driver to go and have some food. What about the rates? You get 50 rupees vada pav, you get 50 rupees roti, you get 500 rupees bill. How truck driver will afford, can afford? ये बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है अपने यहाँ पे.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. Really important points that you make, and especially bringing realization to people like us that the roads are not, expressways are not about us. It has to be primarily transport, because that is the lifeline of the economy. So Rajat, your book has dwelt a lot on this business about disintermediation, and with a lot of sympathy about the drivers, single truck owners. So in the last 5 years, I think you and I have discussed this also. There have been various apps like Wahak, which talk about 100% commission-free deals, eliminating disintermediation costs. Then you have intercity things like Porter that have come up. And I'm sure, having done this journey, you have also been keeping tabs on the new developments that are happening. Would you want to talk a little bit about what has happened post your book?
Sure. So firstly, it's necessary to understand what are the benefits of this technological intervention in intermediaries. What is happening that's wrong and which is detrimental to the transport ecosystem under the current scenario. So firstly, what these multiple intermediaries and the disproportionate amount that they take away, what it firstly does is it reduces utilization of the truck. Because what happens is that the truck driver does not know. He only has contacts along a certain route, or he's averse towards exploring new routes because he does not have those kind of contracts which will allow him to ply new routes. So it reduces the utilization, and as a result, the truck driver's income also reduces. And what is happening right now, like some figures point out that because of this scenario, only 33% of the time trucks actually move with load, like trucks have full load. Otherwise, they are either running empty, or they are standing idle, or they are running with partial load. So clearly, the current system of intermediation is not serving the overall interests of the industry at many levels. So with that broad perspective on what the detrimental effects of the current scenario is, there are few things that are happening in this front. So firstly, what the companies like BlackBuck are trying to directly connect the transporter to the consignor, the guy who's transporting the trucks to the guy who wants to send out the trucks, by eliminating the two of them in between. But this is a long order. The kind of success that has been achieved, overall speaking, it is still, there's a lot of scope for improvement, because these interests are so local and they're so entrenched in the local political economy that it is very difficult to displace them. Like one of the drivers I spoke to, one of the startup guys I spoke to who was working in Visakhapatnam, even claimed stories of assault and vandalizing his offices by the local entrenched interests in the transportation business. That is the level of resistance that the current incumbents of this system will pose to any such intervention. So it is a huge challenge. But at the same time, startups are doing a great job. Rivigo, for instance, is one of the few startups in long distance hauling, like long haul transport, which have tried to a new model called relay trucking, by which the truck driver changes every 200 or 250 kilometers, so that these it reduces the efficiency of the truck, right? Because if one guy is driving the truck, he will have to sleep in between, he'll have to eat in between. But with this relay model, the turnaround times reduce, the utilization of the truck improves. So there are various aspects to this. It makes sense. Of course, implementing it and assuring smooth facilitation of this is very difficult, because as I myself saw on Indian roads, like it's so unpredictable. Anything can happen. And the traffic jams can come, your truck can break down. But through technological intervention, even in terms of monitoring the health of the truck, and if you can do that, then you can ensure that you can reduce the unpredictable factors. And build a sustainable model. It is possible. So these are the broad developments that have happened. Like you mentioned, Porter has done a great job in intra-city logistics because it's like a Uber for trucks, right? Because so the main issue with this technological intervention is the lack of trust. So unlike an Uber, where you just have to get in the vehicle and there's no big stakes involved in this, but a freight transport business, you have lakhs of mal, the lakhs of worth of mal you need to trust with the guy. So to build, so intermediaries essentially serve the purpose of building this trust, and to replace that with just an app is very difficult because the stakes are too high, and that is the main challenge. That's the fundamental challenge which needs to be tackled in terms of reducing the stranglehold of the intermediaries.
Thanks, Rajat. Ramesh, do you want to comment on this? Because you know a lot about the large trucking companies, and I think one of the things you mentioned in our conversation was that they are not able to match up because they are not organized enough. The associations are not organized enough. In fact, we have one of the associations here in the audience. In fact, I must mention we have a lot of experts in the audience, including people who know logistics. Would you like to comment on it, Ramesh? You are on mute.
Yeah, Sujata, first on the intermediation. Okay, so they have to cover a lot of distance. See, as it is, there is a 22% shortage of truck drivers. So, I mean, this restaurant relay format which Rajat spoke, which Rivigo. In fact, like many companies have tried this long time back, even though Rivigo took, the PR drive and made it as if, they invented it kind of a stuff. A lot of companies tried it. But the question is, see, first, there is a shortage of drivers in the country. So if you have to have 24/7, the vehicle has to run, the one driver sleeps in the, at the backside, like just behind the driver's seat and the other guy drives it. I mean, that's not the proper rest. Okay. The second thing is, when you have a two-driver format, okay, so when you have a two-driver format or multiple drivers, changing at all those kind of a thing, it increases the cost of operation. Okay, so no company, really would like to really, bear the additional expenses. Okay, so even though a company like Rivigo tried, but like the restaurant relay format, basically hinted by Mr. Vinod Dasari of CEO MD of Ashok Leyland. Okay, so he also really pushed hard Rivigo to really implement, and they tried it, but it is not a very successful formula. Okay, so coming back, see, look, the other, yes, the basic problem is, the basic problem is, unable to see most of the transport companies are really not able to get the right costing. The question is whether they really have the right kind of, do they really have a clear sense of operational cost? Unless you know how much of money you're spending, over and above that, you have to add your profit margin, and then you fix about freight, which is not happening. So it is also their own making, for a simple reason: there is a demand supply mismatch. So there are more number of trucks flying in the country than what is required. So obviously, from a shipper's point of view, you would like to keep the cost low. So whoever is offering the lowest rates, that it takes it. So in the process, the transport industry, the transport segment suffers. Okay, coming up and talking about the associations, yes, see, look, ANTC has been there right from pre-independence. Okay, and there is this ITWA. Okay, there are two big associations nationwide. Okay, these guys are trying, but if you really take a look at the way these associations are function, they're all like local satraps. Okay, there is no, see, look, since you are, a very well-known, financial journalist, you have seen the way, national chambers of commerce, FICCI, ASSOCHAM, CA functions. Okay, they have a very strong, like a secretariat, which provides the intellectual depth and which really does the excellent lobbying work. As far as the transport, associations are concerned, they're really not, they are not on the same page on many of the issues. When one association says that I'm going on a strike, the other association says, sorry, I will not support you. Okay, that is one part of it. The second thing, there is no unity. I'm not against the multiplicity of, unions. Like if that is the case, CAA, FICCI, ASSOCHAM, see, they all, when they arrive at one particular, thing, they all have more or less on the same page when they approach the government, they talk the same way. Whereas the association, they are not on the same way. Okay, they fight among themselves. They don't join together. And, while See, I mean, that is where, coming back to a technology, because, you were asking about a technology point of view. In fact, today, see, there are more than hundreds of, this intermediaries like, Blackback, Rivigo, Fortigo, many such, many such, technology-oriented companies have come. In fact, they don't call themselves a transporters, even though their core business is, transportation. They would like to, call themselves as a technology companies. Okay, so that is what is happening. In fact, see, they are really able to present their point of view across the government. The government is also willing to listen to them. Whereas as far as the associations are concerned, they really need to. Yes, their concerns are very. I mean, the associations' concerns are very genuine. Nobody understands the pain points of the industry like them, but they are unable to come together and really make a dent on. So I mean, for instance, I'll tell you. See, ever since the COVID has come, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, the Minister for Highways and Transportation, till today, he has never met any transport, association people. It's only the bureaucracy which is meeting. Whereas the same minister is able to find time to meet all and sundry, I mean, over the, Zoom call and all those kind of a thing. But why this reluctance? Okay, so, possibly, he has it's not only, I mean, that's what I feel. Not only the truck drivers are considered as an untouchable or kind of a thing, even the fleet owners, in a way are treated, very shabbily by this government. Okay, and the associations have, for instance, whenever they have an issue, for instance, they have very strong case as far as the fuel price is concerned. The way it's, the diesel prices are inching towards 100 rupees per liter kind of a thing. This is a very, interesting, kind of a thing, which these guys can come together and do something about it. Well, okay, even in the association, for instance, if you take a big company like Safe Express, TCI, they are all members of All India, I mean, AMTC and I2R, all those kind of a thing. But on the day when a strike is called, all the, trucks of even VRL, which has got more than 4,000, 5,000 trucks, all these big guys will never participate. Their trucks will continue to run. It's only the small guys and who are the organizers, they try to do it. So obviously it's a flop. Any strike, announced by this association, internal sabotage. I mean, I won't call it a sabotage, but there is a lack of cooperation. They are really unable to sell within their own self. Okay, what is needed is a cohesive, the associations work together, need not have to merge, but they need a concentrated effort.
I get your point. The question then would be not just about associations, but whether they're able to make a point. In fact, a lot of times we have wondered, why is it that we don't hear enough about them? They need a proper academic discussion on how fuel prices impact the cost of transport. In fact, I think Rajat's book should be a must reading, because from what I understand, Rajat, there is overloading to make it viable. Then Sanjay has told us about the kind of costs because of multiplicity of tolls. There's no study on that to talk about how repeated tolling is adding to costs. Then Ramesh has talked about how the associations are not able to put their point across, and I don't think going on strike is the answer. You first have to put numbers on the table to say how it's impacting the industry. In fact, I think Viresh Malik, who has himself driven a truck, has put a comment over here very correctly, which says that it's not a shortage of drivers as a shortage of people willing to pay enough, because it's demand supply. If there were people willing to pay, there would be more drivers coming into this area. And that brings us again to the next point which Rajat has talked about, which is corruption and laws. Okay, that it is a state subject and there is ambiguity of laws. So I'm going to ask Sanjay first if he has comments on this part, and then Rajat, I know, has thoughts on this, so we will go on to him. So Sanjay, over to you first.
Yes. Combination of e-way bill and fast tag, which is a wonderful combination. The truck, not only truck driver, transportation, road transportation actually should make seamless traffic. Transportation or faster or at the speed of 40 km per hour also in 24 hours, and with the available option of relay. Okay, they should cross 1,000. They should complete 1,000 kilometers in one day, which is possible. Now, problem is, yes, corruption, major corruption. मतलब कुछ भी करेंगे लेकिन खाएंगे. That is the worst part. Yes, overloading में ये लोग फंस जाते हैं. Second part, then it comes to dimension, new laws, dimension of land, dimension of height, dimension of, यहाँ पे बहुत चोरी होती है, यहाँ पे वो फंस जाते हैं. Now the point is corruption major, if center implements anything or gets in some new laws or amendment or wonderful thing, do not apply. It is a major conflict between state and central also. That is also affecting the transport sector. Last but not the least, there is no unity among the transport people, union. There is a problem of north-south dialogue. बहुत बड़ा problem है.
Very interesting. I think Rajat has talked about it, the north-south difference and how things are possibly a little better in the south. Maybe we are all South Indians, we like to say it. But, you want to talk about that, the fact that ambiguity of laws allows corruption also, allows drivers to be harassed and fleeced, and the huge difference between what happens in the northern states, especially what you've described, quite chilling in the northeast, and as compared to that, what happens in South India.
Yeah. So, ma'am, like the fundamental principle behind the law, like as Napoleon said, should be that it should be simple enough for a peasant to read, and it should be concise enough for it to fit into his pocket. These are the two fundamental principles. It should be simple to interpret, and it should be concise. And this is what encourages the following of rule of law. If laws are cumbersome, if laws are too many to be counted in many ways, because there are state laws, there are central laws, and all of them are, as someone who tried to understand this, I found it a really big deal to try and go through the labyrinth of laws. It's like a little labyrinth. So how can we expect someone on the road, like a truck driver, to know, understand, and interpret whether he is breaking any law or not? That question itself is not clear to drivers many times. What law am I breaking exactly? Why have I been penalized? And it can be quite comical in sometimes. I mean, it's dark humor, but it can be quite comical, because in one instance, I found out that many drivers in the south were complaining of this one fine called mechanical, which was imposed on everyone and indiscriminately, and with receipt though. But none of them seemed to agree upon what the reason was what was the reason behind this mechanical penalty. Some thought, like Sanjay sir said, it had something to do with the dimensions. Others thought maybe I'm not wearing a uniform. The interpretations vary depending on what law the driver thought he was breaking. And so because of this ambiguity, and it creates scope for discretion. And discretion is the enemy of accountability in any governance scenario. If there is discretion, then it reduces accountability, and it reduces transparency also in many ways, because then there is no incentive for the officials to follow the laws themselves, because then it becomes so easy to interpret the law according to their own interests. And so the first one big suggestion in this regard would be some sort of transparency of rules. The Economic Survey also proposed this one act called the Transparency of Rules Act. Now, this is a law in itself. I know we are adding to the laws, but this should make it mandatory for all citizen-facing duty. Like, wherever the state interacts with the citizen at any level, there should be transparency in what are the rules governing that interaction, and what are the rules that, if broken, may lead to penalty. If there is that basic sense of understanding and consensus among the community of truckers and officials, this will severely reduce friction and even reduce the cost of logistics, because as we all know, the cost of logistics, the one big part is all these fines and penalties and all this stuff that you pay along the way. So that would be my one big suggestion in this regard.
Excellent. So, corruption, as I think even the Transporters Association had put out on Twitter the other day, which actually led to us doing this discussion, is the big elephant in the room at the end of the day. Because you're talking about a truck which is viable only if it's overloaded. And even then we are saying that drivers are working below minimum wages without proper facilities. So if one just hears this or reads your book, the impression that one gets is there's no hope in hell of this business being viable at all, unless people pay a lot more. When people pay a lot more and they're paying a lot on petrol and diesel also, it's going to be inflationary and the costs going to go up for all of us for all goods and services. And this basic realization doesn't seem to be there with the government at all, because the government seems to think that you keep hiking petrol rates and the economy can take it and there doesn't seem to be an impact. I mean, I wish we could get answers. I've always thought that, technology and disintermediation and disruption will happen with, what you call the tech companies. They have a role to play, and it may transform the whole transport industry and the way it functions. But from what all of you are saying just now, in spite of all these new companies, fleets, apps, and whatever coming in, am I hearing that we are not anywhere near that change happening, because these big four factors, overloading, poor facilities, and corruption, and ambiguity of laws and harassment, is going to keep the industry as it is, and of course not to forget petrol prices. So just a quick 1-minute reaction from the entire panel on this. So can I start with you, Sanjay, and then Ramesh Kumar?
Yes, quick comment. I'll tell you the number of tolls. I don't want to blame any government. Everybody is same. 2000 to 2014, 364 toll plazas on national highways. 364. From 2014 to 2000 till date, has gone to 655. So 300 toll plazas in 7 years. Pace of toll plazas. Point number one, that is going to be a main hurdle. Unless until we stop this, industry is willing to pay the toll. You say the amount, we are ready to pay, but seamless karo, barrierless karo, but government is willing because of corruption and underreporting. In spite of all this, we are dedicated freight corridor for road transport. We have for railway. New project is coming from Haryana to JNPT. It is dedicated railway line, freight railway corridor. It should be made available by National Highway or Ministry of Road Transport. Dedicated minimum 500 to 1,000 kilometers dedicated freight only for transport or this industry. And that is going to be the solution, which is possible. अगर आप नए हाईवे बना रहे हो, what is the harm in making this complete closed transport corridor or dedicated to freight, only freight? This could be one solution.
Right. So Ramesh, you want to react to that? Quick reaction.
Yeah. You mentioned about the biggest elephant is transportation. I mean, I would say that the guys who can really make who can really bring about a major change, the entire I mean, we are ultimately talking about reducing the logistics cost. For whom whether is a transporter or a truck driver or who for whom they are working, it's for the Indian industry. Okay, the Indian industry, they have a much better bargaining power with the government, because they have plants right across the country. But unfortunately, we are all living in an age of outsourcing. All companies more or less assemble things. They don't make anything. Everything is vendor. Vendors, from vendors they get it and assemble it. So given their kind of access they have with the government and right across the state, they can easily help the transportation. Actually, the transporters. Transportation is helping them to really make their growth. So they can really do a lot of stuff if they're really willing. See, in fact, they can begin with they all talk about CSR. See, go to any major company outside the plant and see for yourself what kind of facility they created for transportation. You yourself will notice that there is nothing created, but all these companies will be quite happy to go and spend the money to build up. We are doing this, we are doing that. It's all more PR driven. So that has to shift away. But luckily, in a way, the COVID has really made them to pay greater attention on supply chain element of it, and transportation being part and parcel of transportation. So definitely companies started looking at those kind of a thing. See, look, India is a jugaad country. So, government can, only talk. Ultimately, all the development will happen on their own. They will start doing it. Yes, the future is very bright because, see, even though the government is talking about multimodal, the train cannot go doorstep, delivery or pickup. So ultimately, even that Bharatmala are building up all the massive roads. So it's all meant for, like a trucking, transportation, not for moving rail on the Bharatmala. So things will change on their own. Time is the healer.
That's a very positive statement, but I remember covering Mihan in a big way, which is, stuck for the last 15 years or more. And it was this great multimodal transport plan with Nagpur as the hub and, connecting rail, road and air cargo with this whole airport being built. And it's such a tragedy that Mihan has just not materialized at all, in spite of Nitin Gadkari coming back to the center as transport minister. It's being based in Nagpur. You have a BJP government with a focus on Nagpur. And I'm so surprised that in the last 7 years, there's no mention of Mihan. Since you talked multimodal, I think this is a issue that needs to be flagged over here. But quick comment from Rajat on this, and then I think we should open up to our audience also, because we have a lot of experts here and some interesting comments. So Rajat, would you like to come in on this issue?
So the future of the industry definitely is it's like the darkest hour before dawn, right? So it's definitely going to be better only because with greater internet penetration, with smartphone penetration increasing, digital literacy among the younger truckers rising, there will be a natural migration towards tech-intensive processes and towards simplicity, not because of some great intervention on part of the state or on part of the, but like Ramesh sir said, it will naturally lead to that place. But that said, it's still a long way off because, like I earlier mentioned, there are entrenched interests, there are vested interests, there is the natural resistance and inertia, which is so typically Indian to any change, that will, for some time at least, hold us back. But disintermediation, like you said, ma'am, is the way to go forward because what this is, it will the kind of utilization loss we are experiencing because of these intermediaries is huge. When there is no information visibility, so say a trucker wants to take on load, he is free, he does not, he is willing to take on load, but he does not have the information networks to discover load because of the fixed intermediaries that he deals with. Because of this, he is not using his truck properly, because of which there is overloading, because in order to make his thing work, he has to overload the truck, whatever limited trips that he gets. So all these problems are then ultimately linked to the fact that the intermediaries are there and they are leading to severe utilization losses for trucks. And until this essential conundrum is solved, technology is the way to deal with this, and I believe it will deal with it better going forward.
Thanks, Rajat. I want to tell our listeners that if you have very clear questions, please put them in the chat so that we either come to you to ask them or we can ask it to the panel and take it forward. I'm also now going to ask Viresh Malik. He's got a lot of comments in the chat, and he's a person who's a shippy, who has done extensive rail journeys the way you did this truck journey, and he's actually driven a truck as well. So Viresh, you heard all the points. Quick response from you on some of the important issues of how you think. Basically, one issue that I want to know from you. Do you agree with the panel that, it's a darkest hour before dawn and things are going to change? And what are the key areas where change is required?
No, I don't think, I'm sorry, my video is not working, but I hope you can hear me. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's the darkest hour before dawn because a lot of things have changed in the last 70 years. We have different forms of long distance transport, like I've been writing over here, for example, detachable trailers. So the truck in front, the power, the horse, goes from one state to the border of that state, detaches, and then another truck takes over. Then there is unitized cargo. There are containers which move on flatbeds. The essence of the issue is that if we are talking about the truck driver, then our truck drivers are in huge demand, not just in neighboring countries and Africa, but also in so-called developed countries. That's where the best guys go. Since Rajat has done stuff in the south, a good Volvo truck driver gets less than a good Volvo bus driver, and that is 70,000 plus benefits. He apparently rode on what is called Jalandhar body, wooden body on chassis passed by Form 22 and 22A. I hope I'm getting through on that point. Those kind of trucks. But these new generation truck drivers, they are really worth every rupee they earn, and they get that kind of money. And if they don't get the money, they are like headed for Australia, for Africa, and economies coming up. So that's what I'm trying to say. This is going to have a different kind of benefit in India, because one day or the other, the truck operators, whether they are the Arthiyas or the middlemen or the large customers, I don't want to name them, but the home delivery companies, for example, they are already paying good money to truck drivers. Sadly, the truck driver on the wooden body, Jalandhar body as it is often called, hard chassis, which emerged from a factory as a cowl and chassis and not as a full body. And I've written that here. That era is certainly going to come to an end. We are probably amongst the last 3-4 countries where we see those kind of trucks anyway. So this is not the darkest hour, sir. And believe me, you need to head into the interior of this country like I do. I still travel a bit. COVID has kept me down a little bit, but I do know a bit of what's going on. There's one point that I wanted to tell Rajat Saab over here, that the trust deficit, especially on tri-junctions and state borders, is not only hitting the truck drivers and bus drivers anymore, but also hitting the middle class. And that's very, very sad. So the middle class, me included, I prefer trains now and not driving. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thanks, Veeresh. One of the questions posed here by Mr. Mudit Jain is, why don't we have a white paper on issues, combining all the things that we discussed today? My question again would be, who would prepare this white paper, and would the truckers associations like to do? I think we have someone from AIWTC. Would you like to come in and respond to this? Is there, you have such an expert panel over here, you should take their help and probably do something so that you present a cohesive front. Would you like, sir, to talk about this?
Sure, ma'am.
Go ahead.
So we at AITWA are always looking forward to doing things for the benefit of all stakeholders. And I'm glad that this panel has been set up today by Money Life to discuss a subject which otherwise never features in any discussion, that is truck drivers. And Rajatji's book definitely did make a big difference to the sector and to people who did come to know about the sector. So we are definitely open to coming back to your question. We as an association are definitely open to collaborating with the intellectuals in this space to put together information which can go out there and make a difference to the lives of not just truck drivers but the entire ecosystem.
But would you like to say a little more about the points they made about, transport associations not presenting a unified front, and also, not resorting to strikes as an option, but, presenting a more intellectual argument about whatever you want? Is that something you want to look at or talk about?
So it's a tricky question. Today if I ask you that the diesel prices are at astronomically high prices like 90 rupees or 100 rupees, and truck drivers, truck owners across the country are literally crying that what are associations doing? So in such situations, a strike, be it a token strike, be it an indefinite strike, it's probably the only way to showcase unity that yes, we are against this policy of the government. So it's not something today for the transport sector to do a strike every day. There's a loss of money, right? We're paying EMIs on our trucks. We're paying salaries to drivers. We have a cost of running our business. So a day of loss of business definitely pinches us. So it's not something that we do willingly. We don't work as unions to sort of, put forth our point. Unfortunately, we're not as large a voice as, maybe the CIIs or the FICCIs of the world, how, the others mentioned on the panel. Maybe the reason for that is that we're not really given that kind of hearing from the people who matter, or, the decision makers, like Mr. Ramesh Kumar mentioned. It's unfortunate that even the transport minister himself didn't spare a minute throughout the last 1.5 years to even meet the transporters who per se for whom he's building the highways who we spoke about. So, it's so contradictory. You're building highways every day, which you're going on publicizing that we're building so many kilometers a day, we're spending lakhs of crores, but you don't have a minute to speak to the users of it, to understand what they are going through, whether they really want those roads or they want something else from you.
So, highways and toll plazas also,
Absolutely. And when I say highways,
Toll plaza
Sanjay
cropping
ji,
up
I mean toll
every
plaza, of
day.
course. वो तो अंडरस्टूड है ना सर, आजकल तो रोड बनेगा तो टोल प्लाजा तो मतलब गिफ्ट में आता है.
Yeah, then where this cess on diesel, cess on petrol goes? Where
Exactly.
this GST?
And in 2017,
Service tax, cess on diesel, cess on petrol was started only to construct national highways and maintain national highways. But all this, now toll also.
Exactly. I agree with
Where
Sanjay.
is leading? Is it not a bloody double, sorry for my language, is it not double, triple taxation?
No, I think we must mention to the audience that Sanjay Shirodkar and 3 others have actually filed a case on this in the Bombay High Court. And, as usual, cases go on very slowly, but they've got some good intermediate reactions at least. But it is a fact. It all started, believe it or not, again, by the failed ILFS, which first proposed in the state that you have a small 50 paisa on petrol and diesel as the smoothest way to collect. And you know how much the 50 paisa has increased now. And it is 50 paisa, then there is GST, then there are tolls. It is multiple hits. And I think, Mr. Gupta, since we have the benefit of having you here in this session, and there was a talk about a white paper, I really think that the industry, along hopefully CII and FICCI should join you, but you need a proper paper. And if 3 or 4 people like Sanjay Shirodkar and Vatigaonkar and others have gone to court with this, done the homework, I think it's astonishing that large transport companies and associations and industry associations, and I blame the bigger ones first, are just sitting down and watching, because this is the job that should have been done by them. They should have been in court talking about multiple taxations, because it never hurts individuals. You take a ride once in a blue moon, you're going on a pleasure trip, so that additional 300, 400 that you pay. In fact, one of the points on the Mumbai-Pune Expressway, which I have covered in great detail since the 90s, has been exactly this, that the inflation rate of the toll is fixed, and it's endless because they keep increasing it. They never take into account the cost of real inflation and interest rate. And I remember at one point of time, like today, when interest rates are low, there was a time when the toll went up 15% at a time when inflation plus interest rate combined was not even 7%. So I kept saying, why is it that your toll will increase at twice the amount? Because we people pay, which is we as individual traveling in a car, but transport is an industry. And I think it's important that this industry comes together. Quick reactions on this from everybody. Sanjay, would you like to start?
Yes, actually, go pass by, vehicle population increases. There is not a single stretch in India where it has shown the decreased rate of vehicle population. It increases every year. So the toll rate should be decreased. That is the case. But यहाँ पे तो vehicle population जैसे बढ़ता है, toll rate वैसे बढ़ता. Now, Mumbai Expressway cost 270 rupees. They have till 2052. What? The expressway collection on record while tender 1,000 crore per year. I mean, where we are leading? On top of that, every day there's a new toll plaza cropping up. No transparency, under-reporting, no inspection, no audit, no this amount showing in either state budget or central budget. And now fast track. Where it go? ये पैसा कहाँ जा रहा है? Now they have made इसको सब छुपाने के लिए they have created Indian Highways Management Corporation Limited, which is a private body. All these toll operators, constructors, and national highway. You have to go through national highway. Now, I mean, what is this happening? Why private company? And again, same. Cess on petrol, cess on diesel. initially earlier service tax, and now GST, and now toll. I have approached, I will not take anybody's name, I have approached for all these issues of double taxation and toll plaza.
Thanks, Sanjay.
Unfortunately.
Quick reaction from our panelists, Ramesh, you, and then Rajat, and then we go on to the next question.
Yeah. See, look, you spoke about a white paper. Actually, there is no need for a white paper. There are umpteen number of papers circulating in the government. Okay, there is a Niti Aayog's own paper. Now the government has, the Ministry of Commerce and Industry has got a dedicated, like a logistics division. So which is currently working on the draft national logistics policy, and it is going deep into all aspects. In fact, I was also taking a look at what Viresh Malik was talking about: multimodal, coastal shipping, all those kind of a thing. See, there is no need to create fresh, fresh documentation to be done. Like a lot of things. The only thing what is missing is all these things. All these people have to come together and see. Today, the kind of attention the government is paying to the COVID management, it's because of the legal route. That is where like Sanjay, what Sanjay is doing on the toll issue. Similarly, if the Transport Association and industry lobby groups of CAI, FICCI, ASSOCHAM, they all can come together, that will really create a formidable kind of a thing. If they can approach for instance, I spoke about overload and all those kind of a thing. 2005. Okay, so one of the transporter really went to Supreme Court saying that the law says this. In spite of it, overload is allowed. Supreme Court said, look, it's already there. The implementation is missing. So there is no need to. The government is fully aware of what needs to be done, but there is coming on government collectively. See, Ashok also admitted. See, look, the government is not interested in listening to the transporter segment per se. Yes, definitely the government is interested in listening to the industry lobby, CAI, FICCI, ASSOCHAM, all those kind of a thing. So if these guys can come together, because ultimately, this transport segment totally support the Indian industry. The Indian industry is the biggest thing on whom the government depends for the revenue generation. Okay, even for employment, job opportunity, everything. So if these guys can come together and move the court, see, legal route. See, the moment collectively they approach the court, then there is no other option but for the government to really get in and start spilling the beans and rightly ask questions like how the chess money is spent, all those things. What is required is a collective action together. But that is the only way forward. See, otherwise, no. Nothing is going to happen. If anything has to happen, it will happen on its own. That's it.
Absolutely. Rajat?
I'll just share one line. The last time the strike was happened on toll issue, 1st to 5th October 2014. The complete India was halted. 1st to 5th 2014. Mr. Gadkari called transporters. One meeting. Till date, 7 years, no meeting.
Amazing. Rajat, you want to say something on this?
I think, ma'am, Ramesh sir and Sanjay sir, I don't have anything to add as such. I believe that.
Right. I think, Mr. Gupta, you want to react to it since you are an association. It's only fair that you would have views.
So I missed the question. Which question would you like me to react to, ma'am?
I think the consensus in the panel was that if there is a united front, there is enough of documentation, there is no need for another white paper, as one of the industrialists on the group suggested. So what you need is a unified front and strong lobbying with support from industry. So I was just wondering if you want to react to this at all.
It's I think it's easier said than done to create a united front simply because it's such a large, like we said, an unorganized space. Today when somebody's truck is standing and he doesn't have a load, he doesn't wait for what the union is saying or what his body is saying because they aren't providing him the load. So they want to get their vehicle moving. They want to go back home. They want to survive.
All right, we're still talking about the old-fashioned way of individual truckers, but we're talking about industry backing because ultimately all these costs have to be paid by industry.
Absolutely. So the opposition definitely has to be created together. The fight for that has to be done together, and that's something which we try to do every day. But struggle to get an audience.
It's unfortunate that they are not standing behind you and, pushing for the causes that you're taking up because it affects them. I hope this realization dawns faster. I think we have a very well-known activist, Subhash Agarwalji here, and I think he wants to say something. Can we unmute him, Arvind?
मेरा कहना ये है कि टोल प्लाजा का कंसेप्ट ही खत्म करके वन टाइम टोल टैक्स क्यों नहीं लगा दिया जाए, जैसे टाइम रोड टैक्स होता है. इससे सारी करप्शन ही दूर हो जाएगी. दूसरा क्या है, मैंने राजस्थान में कई जगह देखा है, सड़कें होती हैं, वहां पे पुलिसमैन और मसलमैन मिलकर ऑथराइज टोल प्लाजा बना लेते हैं, कि वहां पे धांधलेबाजी चल रही है.
Correct. I think Sanjay wants to react to that. Sanjay, go ahead.
Yes, Subhaji, namaskar. Transport industry has already given all these options. Charge us extra, you charge us under national permit, you say the amount, total collection of yearly collection of toll of National Highway or Ministry, we are ready to pay. Transport industry is open. Sir, give us seamless, barrierless traffic. We are ready to pay for anything. Unfortunately, government is not acting on this.
Okay, thank you so much, Sanjay. And I think this brings us to the end of our 1.5 hour. I want to take a minute to thank all of you. This has been a very interesting discussion for me. I hope it's been very interesting to the audience as well. And I would still suggest read the book, because it's a fun book apart from all the serious issues that we discussed this evening. Thank you, Rajat, for writing it. I'm very jealous of that journey that you were able to make. And after this, you're going to go and become a bureaucrat. We'll come back and ask you questions about what you're doing from the inside. Thank you, Ramesh. Your information on logistics is wonderful. I think Ruben Mascarenhas here wants to connect with Sanjay Shirodkar. Believe me, Ruben, he's done brilliant work along with 4. He is the Pune activist among the group of 4 who's been fighting this for all of us. I wish we, the people, could join them and do more, because I think when we talk about a united front, it's not just industry alone, it is about us. And, spending time on social media, I find that most of us are so cocky about whether you can go smoothly on your holiday to Lonavala or Mahabaleshwar or somewhere else paying that toll. We don't want to think that roads are not about our joyrides, but it's about industry, it's about inflation. I'm also very grateful to Abhishek Gupta for being here, because your perspectives were important. And thanks Viresh, thanks Subhash Agarwal ji for your presence. Thank you again everyone for a wonderful discussion.